Hi everyone, it's Diane with SewBatik, and today we are going to be exploring our world of Batik Cotton Jersey Knit. For me, I don't know about you, but for me, November brings cold weather. And here we've been unbelievably mild. It's crazy. We have no snow. It's still in the 40s and 50s. It drops down into the 20s and 30s in the morning. But I always think about November being that first month where I start wearing all of my long sleeve jersey knit tops and sweaters and cardigans and quilted jackets and everything just to bundle up a little bit. And I've been really enjoying all the garments that we've been exploring and we've been sewing up over the last year or two, to be honest with you. I kind of walk through my office and grab a garment and go, which has been kind of fun. But today I really, I decided to wear this jersey knit top, which is an itch to stitch top. And we'll get to talking about that just a little bit later, but I absolutely love this top. And here is the stack. It's not all of them now that I think about it, but here's a stack of all of our options for our Batik Cotton Jersey Knit. But before we go, I'm not going to go through all of these. Let me just tell you that. But I want to share with you a little bit about our fabric for those of you who may be new to SewBatik. And we're going to talk about a customer question that really hit home and something that I need to talk about in more detail. Here is one of our jersey knit fabrics, and this is the Valhalla motif in the shade of Lamb Chop. Our fabric, I find it to be super soft and really, really comfortable to wear every time I wear one of our jersey knit tops. But I would consider it a very stable knit. So if you see that in any of your fabric requirements for knit garments, it is a stable knit, and our knit will stretch approximately 20%. Let me just open this up so you can see kind of what the stretch will be like. So when I pull this apart, and so I would say about 20% or so. It measures in full width 69 inches to 72 inches wide. And I would say let me grab a pattern here. This is a Marlo sweater pattern, which I'm going to share with you a little bit later. But most knit patterns, the requirements are for either a 45-inch wide fabric, a 54-inch wide fabric, or some of the other ones that I'm working with are for a 60-inch. So we do have to take into consideration a little bit the width of our fabric. Sometimes you will need a lot less yardage depending on how we lay out our pattern pieces. And we'll get into that just a little bit. But I just wanted to share with you a little bit about the fabric itself, how it drapes. It's really hard to kind of tell unless you have the fabric in your hands, but I think you can tell from this, by my holding it here, how nicely it drapes and the stretch of the fabric. When it comes to pattern layout, definitely, first things first, follow the layout that's provided by your pattern designer. It is the simplest way just to get started. I do that every single time I lay out fabric, regardless of whether or not it's on a jersey knit or a cotton or a linen or whatever it happens to be. I often get the question, how do I convert my yardage from the 54 inches that is on my pattern to your wider jersey knit? And it's really not a simple answer because there's so many things that you have to take into consideration. You have to take into consideration your personal size, as well as the style of the garment itself. It could be long sleeve, longer garment, it could be a dress, it could be very full. It really depends on the style of the garment, and we all, even I, have to go through the routine of physically taking those pattern pieces and laying them out, not necessarily on the fabric, but on this cutting table or on, even if you have one of those cardboard things that you can put out on a bed or on a table, if you mark off at least half of the full width of your fabric. So for example, let's say this fabric is 69 inches. So if I fold this in half, I know that that is the width double folded. Mark that off on your table. Start laying out each one of your pattern pieces. Always making sure that you're on grain and taking into account whether or not the pattern piece says to cut 1, 2, or sometimes 4, depending on what you're sewing, whether it be pockets or anything else. But you kind of have to lay everything out. And I start with everything on the fold, and then I kind of take it from there just to make it simple. But there are so many different ways that you can lay out pattern pieces. And for example, on this particular garment, this is the Venado top by Itch to Stitch. And her pattern requirements are for 54 inches wide. So I always challenge myself to make sure that I can, of course, with the 69 or 72 inch wide fabric, I don't need as much fabric. A couple things to think about though, also, when you're looking at the pattern itself, is definitely read their description. Sometimes, if not all the time, it is your yardage requirements after you've washed your fabric. They don't take into consideration your particular fabric, nor how you wash and care for it before you've cut out your pattern pieces. So always make sure that you're allowing for fabric shrinkage, which is something that we do every time we put together the yardage that goes into our garment kits or fabric packs. Is we always want to make sure that there is enough to allow for what we believe is the standard shrink of our fabric. And for jersey knit, it's really about 3%. It is going to shrink. It is a cotton fabric. And again, I wash my fabric using, actually, I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but well, I can talk about it now. I use Synthrapol almost 100% of the time. There are times when I worry about a specific color and use Retain, but Synthrapol is really what I use. And there are 2 versions of this product. There is the original Synthrapol, which is for washing machines that have a lot of water that you're agitating and that you use through the rinse cycle. Some of the older washing machines or the top load with a lot of agitation, you'll need just the regular Synthrapol. If you have a washing machine that is a front load washing machine, which is what I have, or you have a top load that is a water efficient or low water washing machine, you are going to need the low foam version, because we want to make sure that you're not filling your machine with a lot of soap. And it doesn't typically want that. My machine does not like a lot of soap in the washing machine. It wants to be able to agitate and rinse and end up with no soap left over. So wash with Synthrapol just to remove any excess dyes and wax off your fabric. And then I do put mine in the dryer. I shake it out, put it in the dryer. I like a dryer sheet, so I do use that until it is almost dry. And then I take it out of the dryer and I fold it really nicely so that I don't necessarily need to press it before I lay out my pattern pieces. So definitely wash your fabric. I wasn't going to go on that tangent yet, but there we go. So you have to take into account the yardage that you need after it has been pre-washed. Okay, so do think about that when you're looking at the yardage requirements on the back of a pattern jacket or a pattern that you're about to make. So for example, this Venado top, the size range and the yardage, let's say from 0 to 20, was a yard. I have a little cheat sheet here. Was 1.5 yards to 2.25 yards of 54-inch wide fabric. For our kit and for what I use for laying out a size 0 to a 20, I used 1.75 yards. Now again, that is to make sure that you're also taking into account shrinkage. So there is a little bit of fabric saving when you have a wider jersey knit. Now I know this sounds obvious, but from a size 22 to a 40, we're dealing with a little bit wider pattern pieces and a different layout. So for our fabric, even being 69 to 72 inches wide, we need 2 5/8, where theirs was 2 1/4 to 2 1/2. But again, if I laid out my pattern pieces without taking into consideration the fabric washing, you could get that the 2 1/2 makes sense. But it won't if I start you with 2 1/2 yards and then you wash it and then you cut out your pattern pieces. So that's why ours is 2 5/8, which is only 2 inches difference between that for sizes 22 to 40. So that's an example of the difference. There is a little bit of savings, but again, it all is dependent on how you like to lay out your pattern pieces as well. And again, all about the garment. Like I said, if there is a huge A-line dress or a lot of fullness in a skirt, it takes a lot of yardage to work with the different style patterns that you have out there. So definitely take that into consideration. The other thing that I want to talk to you about when you're working with jersey knit, definitely make sure you have a jersey knit needle for your sewing machine. This may sound obvious, but it is not always obvious. You need a ballpoint needle, and this one does say jersey ballpoint on it, and I like to use the size that is an 80/12. It works beautifully with our fabric, and there's so many different kinds and manufacturers of needles. Just work with the kind that you like. It is not a thick fabric. It is not, I mean, sewing with it is like, I always say this, but like sewing with butter. It just really glides through. So just feel comfortable with whatever needle manufacturer or brand you like, as long as it is a jersey or a stretch needle that is a ballpoint needle. And again, I really like the size 80/12. The one other thing that you're going to see on a lot of patterns as a notion is interfacing. And on most of my woven fabrics, I recommend the Envy Silk, which is a really super lightweight fusible interfacing. And for jersey, though, I like, and this is, again, you can almost see through this, it's a lightweight interfacing, but this is French fuse, and it is a knit. It has a little bit of stretch to it, so you have to know how to lay out your patterns on your knit fusible as well. But this comes in black as well as white, and we'll use this interfacing in our fabric packs and garment kits for when we're working with jersey knit. Okay, but otherwise, there really isn't any other notion. If you use any kind of stabilizer for your shoulder seams or any other tension point on a garment, I cut everything from the interfacing that I have just to always make sure that there's a similar reinforcement to that, but use whatever notion, stay tape, whatever you like to use for reinforcement as well. And then there's always the buttons or zipper or any other notion that might be going with whatever pattern you are making. But just, those are the simple things to always make sure that you have on hand when you're working with a jersey knit. Now, the next topic that I really want to talk about and really got me thinking about this week's episode about jersey knit was a question that we received, I think it was last week or the week before. And it was by a customer who wanted to know about our jersey knit that is in our sale page. The discount on that jersey knit is 40%. It is a very, very high discount. And what could be wrong with that fabric? I'm going to show you the fabric, but I really wanted to explain today kind of what happened there. Our jersey knit, well, any batik, let me put it this way, is handmade. It's hand dyed, it's hand stamped, and it's all done by humans. And as you know, humans make mistakes. And so we received, it kind of is really fun and tense when we receive our shipments of fabric sometimes. And this one was one that we did not expect. We received a batch of fabric. I don't know if you say a batch, but anyway, we received a bunch of fabric that was an absolutely beautiful design. It is our Sacred Branch design, and here is the soft lilac shade. And when we were opening it up, we were inventorying everything, making sure everything was good. Everything looked beautiful. And then we realized several of these designs were hand dyed and stamped with our Sacred Branch motif on the wrong side. Now, anybody that is kind of looking at you, they're not looking at whether or not your garment is sewn with the fabric on the right or wrong side. Nobody really pays attention to that. But we do. We absolutely do. Every single time we open up the fabric of a shipment of something that we've produced, we look at it every time. And so this fabric came back the wrong way. And so I took some time to take photographs of each one of the fabrics. And on our website, you're going to see images that say right side and wrong side. And then hopefully they look pretty good, but if you ever have a question, you have to give me a call or ask as to whether or not you can kind of see the difference between the right and the wrong side. But we know. So for example, I'm going to show you one really quick, and it is the lilac. But I also did an overhead shot of each one of the colors, and I want to share that with you in just a moment. But if I open up this fabric, let me hold this up. Actually, yeah. This is the right side of the jersey knit, okay? And I'm going to peel back this fabric a little bit so I can show you this. That is the wrong side. I think this will be easier overhead. But you see how the motif is much more defined on the wrong side than it is on the right side? Well, to us, that's not what we wanted. And so we decided that, and this one actually is a fabric that doesn't show so differently from the right side to the wrong side of the fabric. The other ones you will see are a little bit more defined. So we just didn't want and didn't feel like we should be selling this and offering this to you as a full retail price. And so that's why this entire group of 9 fabrics is in our sale section. And really, they are perfect for, I mean, you can sew with these, you can use these, you can make them into garments, and you can use the right or wrong side. It does not depend. It just depends on what you want to do with the fabric. But we wanted you to know what the right and wrong side looked like before you received it. Before moving forward, let me show you this overhead video. Each one of these fabrics is the Sacred Branch motif. And I'm going to go through each one of the colors so that you can see the difference as close up as I can make it on the wrong side of the fabric, which you're going to see even on this one here, which is starboard green. You see that this is the wrong side, and this is the side that was stamped, which of course is not correct. We want to always be stamping it on the right side of the fabric. So you're going to see a little bit more definition on the wrong side. And let me open this up so you can see that. So this is the wrong side. And when I flip this back, you're going to see what we would consider the right side of the jersey knit. So it's a little bit less defined. And so you have to make that your choice as to whether or not this is something that you can use for a test fabric, for a new garment pattern, or how you want to use it. Okay, so that's the difference between the wrong side and the right side. I'm going to go through each one of the shades so you can see the differences. This is Turkish Coffee. And this is the wrong side. And here is the right side. Wrong side, right side. This is deep royal blue. It's such a rich blue. This on the table here. So this is the right side. This is the wrong side. So you can distinctly see the difference between the depth of the motif and the right side here. This is navel teal. And this is the wrong side, so printed on the wrong. And here is the right side. This one isn't actually too bad, but I still feel like it's not at the right depth that it should be for our jersey knit in the Sacred Branch stamp. Right side, wrong side. This is forward fuchsia, such a fun fabric. And this is the right side. Here is the wrong side as it's printed and stamped. Right side and wrong. Okay. This is eggplant. This is the wrong side. And here is the right side. A little less defined. We don't see as much of the motif. This is passionate purple. And this is the wrong side. And here is the right side. Next we have turquoise. This is the wrong side, and here is the right side. You can see the difference there. And this is the selvage edge that I'm uncurling right there. And last we have lilac. I'm going to make my test garment just to make sure all the sizing and everything is working nicely for me. This is the lilac, and this is the one I'm going to use for my test. So I'm showing you right now, this is the right side of the fabric, and here is the wrong side. On this, because there's such a light shade within the motif itself, you can distinctly see the difference between the depth. However, this is the right side of the knit that will be on the outside of my garment. Okay? Lilac, turquoise, passionate purple, eggplant, forward fuchsia, navel teal, deep royal blue, Turkish coffee, and starboard green. So as you can see, some of the fabrics are similar between the right and the wrong side. Some are quite different. And so you'll have to be the judge of whether or not you want to work with the right or the wrong side of the jersey knit. Use it as your sample fabric when you are validating a new garment pattern, whatever it happens to be. I actually changed my mind. And instead of using the lilac as my cardigan, I'm going to do the new cardigan by Itch to Stitch, which is the Teifi cardigan. And I am going to make it out of the Sacred Branch in deep royal blue. I decided to use this fabric instead, and I have washed this fabric up. I washed it up last night, and then I haven't had a solid black cardigan in quite some time. And so I'm going to make, if I have to make any adjustments to the pattern, I'll do that using this particular fabric. And I'm going to show you the process along the way as well. But I'm going to make my cardigan also out of our solid black, which is called Tuxedo. I'm really excited to finally use this tuxedo for a cardigan. I don't know, I just really wanted to have a solid black cardigan, and this was just a beautiful style from Itch to Stitch. I'd like to introduce some of the features with the new Teifi cardigan pattern by Itch to Stitch and share with you some of the reasons why I really love this pattern. It is a beautifully styled cardigan, buttoned down with a traditional collar, a beautiful collar, and optional pockets. And it also has multiple lengths and multiple sleeve variations. So you can have a short sleeve and a long sleeve. It can be a cropped cardigan or a longer high hip level. Now, know that you can always lengthen or shorten. There's always the lengthening and shortening lines to help you with that. I am going to make the high hip. I'm not one for a cropped cardigan, but the pocket options are really kind of fun. And I really enjoyed looking at the pattern testers garments that they made. Some no pockets at all, some with just open pockets, and some with the pocket flap. And so there's a lot of different options with this garment pattern, and I think it's really going to be fun to sew. The one thing to know about the pattern is that it will require 4 or 5 half-inch buttons. And again, there is interfacing for the collar, the very top of the pockets, and the front facing. She's also recommending a bias strip of fabric to secure and to seal and cover the seam between the collar and the back and the front portion of the garment. I think it's going to be a really fun and simple cardigan to sew. The Teifi pattern only has a few pattern pieces, and so I'm going to share each one of the pattern pieces with you. This is the back, and it is placed on the center fold. Remember, the stretch has to go around you. So I marked every one of the different stretch lines and the straight of grain on each one of the pattern pieces just to make sure. Here is the front pattern piece with our button placement, pocket placement, and the facing. The long sleeve. We have the pockets and the pocket flap if you decide to put the pockets on, and the collar, which is a very traditional collar. So there's only a few pieces that are needed for this particular pattern, and it's going to really, really be, I think, a fast make and really fun to make. Now, the one thing that I often question, and specifically for this one, since I'm going to be using it as a cardigan, so it's going to be used over the top of whether it be a cotton classic shirt or a knit top or a turtleneck, whatever it happens to be, I always wonder about how am I going to test my sleeve? Is this going to be the right width to cover up a second garment? And the second thing I think about is knit with knit. So I wear a lot of knit tops, whether it be just our jersey knit or a turtleneck that I've purchased from a retail store, whatever it happens to be, just that kind of a little bit of friction between the two knit fabrics. And so a while back, I made a second Marlo sweater. Now, the Marlo sweater does have a little bit of a wider sleeve to it, but sometimes for me, instead of making up my sample just to make sure of the sleeve and how it's going to fit me, I like to find a cardigan and put it on over the top of a knit shirt just to make sure that it's going to fit right. So this cardigan or this sweater is a little bit wider on the sleeves. You can see that it actually has a lot of room in the sleeve itself. But what I'm finding when I put on a knit on top of a knit, sometimes it kind of feels like you have to kind of get it in place, but it really fits nicely. So what I'm going to do is compare this sleeve to the sleeve of the cardigan and make any adjustments that I want to make sure that it's going to fit nicely over a sweater. And the other reason why I wanted to share this with you is that I made this version of the Marlo sweater without the bottom facing on it. And I really love how that fits. It just seems to kind of stop and it fits really beautifully. So if you're thinking about the Marlo sweater, also out of Jersey Knit, it's a great, great, great sweater pattern. It is so comfy and it has a lot of space and a lot of room in it to wear anything you want underneath and feel super comfortable. But you don't have to have the bottom rib at the bottom of your sweater if you don't want to. And it looks great. Now that I'm feeling really, really super warm in these two knit tops, if you have any questions about any of our Jersey Knit or any of our other fabrics, definitely leave a question or a comment below or give us a call. If you're new to SewBatik and like our video content, definitely like and subscribe to our channel. And we hope you jump over to our website and take a look at our entire collection of batik cotton, linen, canvas, jersey, and rayon. And until next time, happy sewing, smiling, and sharing.